During this project, we're going to prepare a rigged character, download that character, and then select a pose to 3D print from. I hope you enjoy it. So we're going to cover a lot of ground in this tutorial. We're going to jump into a browser-based application called Mixamo that will allow us to select some characters. It will auto-rig those characters to animations as FBX files. We're going to download our characters, and then I'll show you a couple different ways to get those characters exported for 3D print. One way is to use a browser-based application called Clara.io. We'll be able to download the characters into Clara and then export those as printable files. And then I'll jump into Cinema 4D and show you how to do the same thing in Cinema 4D, but with maybe a couple extra things that we can do to prep it. So let's start with Mixamo. You can jump into Mixamo.com and sign up for a free account. Or if you already have one, let's say you have some Adobe products, you can always just add it to your Adobe account. So from the home screen, I'm going to hit Browse Characters, and Mixamo is full of a ton of different pretty high-end characters that you can choose from. So as you scroll down to the bottom of this page, you can see that there are several other pages of characters. There's just a lot of stuff here for you to work with. You can use these for animations, or in this case, as I mentioned, we'll be 3D printing these. There's also several animations. All of these FBX files are loaded for you. So if you want a specific pose to have your character doing in the 3D print, you can just go down through these actions and perhaps find a cool pose that you think would work for a print. So I'm going to go back to the characters and just a couple quick things to discuss with the characters themselves. So a character like this one, this warrior, there's a lot of detail to this guy. There may be some things that we have issues printing, some of these thinner features. So if this is the first time you've done a 3D print this way, just downloading a character and printing it, I would suggest getting something that's a little bit closer to the human form. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and here's a ninja. So I'm going to go ahead and click Use this character. And you can see that the ninja is auto-rigged to those FBX files, and he's taking on that action. So I'm good with this character. Everything looks pretty good for prints. I shouldn't need a bunch of extra supports or anything like that. So I'm going to click on Animations and try to get him in a pose that I think would be a good thing to print. Things like with the arms spread out, jumping, so on and so forth, I would wait till subsequent prints if you have some success doing this for things that are I guess pretty wild and covering a lot of area. In my case, I think I'm going to go with this taunt. The form's pretty closed, and there's not too much crazy stuff going on there. He's like pointing at his watch like, hey, it's time. So I'm going to go ahead and download that, and first we'll throw that into to Cinema 4D and then Clara. So I'm going to go up here to download and click that download button, and make sure that your download settings look like this. The format is FBX, frames per second, leave it at 30. With skin, make sure that it's got the skin. If it doesn't, you have some issues printing it, obviously. You just have the FBX files. And then keyframe reduction, leave it at none. So I'm going to go ahead and click download and wait just a second while it downloads. And it's going to zip it into a zip file that I'll just open up and pull my file out of. So I'll drag that to the desktop. And actually it didn't zip, it's just the FBX package with this one, so that can be dragged directly into Cinema 4D. Import settings, leave them as the default, and in just a second it should populate in my viewport. And you can see up in my objects manager I have the FBX rig right here, and then underneath it is all the tags with the skin, so on and so forth. Now the first thing that I want to do is click on that rig, hold shift on my keyboard and click the model, and I'm going to go right click and go down to connect objects and delete. So I'm going to simplify it just down to the model itself. So if I hit play here, it's not going to play, it's just the model. And let me zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these tags just so we can see what we're using to print. Now when I deleted that Fong tag, let's go back. This Fong tag here, you can see that it's got a smooth surface with that tag, and if we remove that tag, you'll see the geometry. I'll go ahead and do that. The geometry kind of jumps out and it's more simplified. So I can remedy that in a couple different ways. I can leave the Fong and I can right click this and change it to an object. So current state to object, and then I can go ahead and print that one. Or I can go up here and I can subdivide underneath sculpt. I can click subdivide and I can divide the polys and bump that poly count up. In this case, the character looks pretty good even without that tag on there, so it should be printable and it should look pretty good. I'll probably see a little bit of geometry, but it's not going to affect my model. So with the model selected and the objects manager up here, I'm going to go to File, Export, and I'm going to export either an OBJ or an STL. So in this case, there's the STL. Either format will print just fine. So this is titled Taunt. I'm going to put it on the desktop. Make sure you export it as millimeters. We want a small model to bring into the slicer. And it's going to show up right here. Here's my STL. So I can right click and open it really quick just to kind of see what it looks like. And without adjusting the geometry, this looks pretty good. You can see a little bit of it, but that's not a problem. I'm going to go ahead and prep that. So to prep the exact same model in Clara, let's go back to Clara. I'm going to create a new scene, create an empty scene. I'm just going to do a gallery view. I won't make this public. Hit create, and Clara is going to be a little bit slower because it is browser based, but I can go ahead and pull that FBX file into Clara, and right down here you can see that it's importing, and it takes a couple of minutes to import. And there's really no advantage of using Clara over Cinema 4D or vice versa for this model. When we get into animation, it's a little bit better to work with Cinema 4D. But if you don't have that, again, Clara.io is a free application that you can just use anytime you want. Since it's browser based, you can use it on a PC, a Mac, or a Chromebook. So this does take just a little while to load. So while that's loading, I'm just going to let it go, and I'll scrub forward to when it's loaded. Okay, so that is loaded now, and we can go ahead and export this for print. Just one note, if you don't like the pose that the character takes on when it's dropped into your application, you can scrub forward and backward to get a different, I guess, a different view of the model. So I'm going to go ahead and scrub to this spot, and I'll go ahead and export this in this pose. So all you have to do is go to File and Export All. Okay, so Export All is right here. So I'm going to go down and export it as an STL again. Give it just a second to export. Now the file is ready to be downloaded. Be patient with this browser-based version. It does take a while to import and export. That's another advantage that you'll have if you are working with Cinema 4D. Okay, so it's ready to be downloaded. I'm going to click download, and Clara is going to go ahead and put this in a zip file. And I'll go ahead and drag that to the desktop, and then let's talk about slicing this. So let me go back just really quick to so again, in Cinema 4D, if you do want to take on a different pose, you can easily scrub through to do that as well. So here's my zip file from Clara. I'll go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to grab the STL file and drag that directly into my slicer, and we'll take a look at this and see how it looks to be sliced. Alright, so here it is. I can either zoom in. Obviously it's a tiny model, but I can go up to Edit, scale to maximum size just to get a look at it. And the geometry looks pretty good on this. If I want it smoother, I can subdivide that in Cinema 4D, or you can subdivide a mesh in Clara, and we'll save that for a different video. I'm going to go ahead and scale this down, and we'll go through a really quick prep, just a couple things to point out. And with models that are pretty complex like this, it's good practice to take some notes, and as you figure things out, it'll save you a lot of time and heartache if you kind of review that stuff. So this model is ready to be prepped. I'm going to go ahead and bump the infill down a little bit. Since this is a model, it's not going to hold any weight. I don't need a huge honeycomb in there or a tight honeycomb. I'm going to go ahead and include a raft and generate the supports. And we are printing with PLA, so since it's a open bed, I have a lot of success with PLA. I'm going to hit prepare to print. And it's sliced. It looks like this one's going to take about 14 hours, which is not too long for a print this complex, and I can always adjust the speed if need be. I always like to take a look at the model with the supports on it, and if there's anything that looks like there's a major overhang, or if I feel like I need some extra supports, I can always go back, click supports, generate automatic supports, and then if I need to add any more, I can just click add new support structures, and I can add those. I like looking at the model from underneath just to see if there are areas that perhaps with the parameters that I put in for supports, if I need more, if I feel like there's going to be some overhangs, or if the print fails perhaps a couple of times, I can always go back and add supports if I feel I need it. So again, I'll hit prepare to print. Now it's sliced, and I can check how the print's going to go from the raft up, if I so choose. And let's see, you can see the infill is pretty open in there. I could probably print this hollow to save a little bit of time, but that'll give me a little bit of a support structure since I am going to paint this after it's printed. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit Save Toolpath to Disk. I'm going to print this out of an SD card. Select the SD card, title it Print, click Save, and I'm ready to print it. If I'm not happy with that 14-hour print, I can always shrink the size of this down. So I'm just going to actually bump it down here to perhaps like half that size. Hit Prepare to Print. And that bumped it down to half the size. And I'm going to hit Generate Automatic Supports, and it kind of redid the supports to print a smaller version. Yeah, that bumped it down to 6 hours. So actually I'm going to save this one. Title it Good. Hit Save. Just need to check to make sure it's on the SD card, and I'm ready to print.